that if the police got hold of that guy, they could bang him up forever. He's never going to put your name up.
For the professionals, there are two distinct types of hits, public and covert. If it's covert, chances are you won't even know the hit has taken place.
When you kill someone, you don't want it to look like a hit. One only has to look at lethal injection, lethal poisons. When you look at KGB, they did it with umbrellas and injecting people like that.
Markov was walking over Waterloo Bridge when a man at a bus stop stabbed him in the leg with a poison-tip umbrella. Markov died 3 days later.
You can walk up to somebody at a bus stop and you can stick it into them and they're dead almost instantly. And as they collapse, it looks like a heart attack and the guy walks off. And that's it. And in the confusion, he's made his hit.
If it looks like natural causes, all the better. Because then you haven't got the egg with the police and you haven't got the egg with that. So if someone, for instance, had diabetes, you could OD them on insulin.
But sometimes when the professional needs to send a message, a very public execution is the best way.
Oh my God.
And motorbike hits are the current trend.
Motorbikes and crash helmets seem to be the most popular method at the moment. You normally get a stolen motorbike, you'll normally wear a crash helmet throughout, you'll normally go as close to your opponent as you can. It just means that it's much easier to get through and to get away. Even if you've got a police car on your tail, it's much, much easier to actually shake them off.
A guy actually walked out of a police station that was on bail and a motorcyclist drew up. And fired a gun point blank range at him and drove off.
It's an easy form of escape. Pull up on a motorbike, passenger gets off, bang, bang, back on the motorcycle and away. And very hard to capture.
Witnesses don't really get a chance to see you. Everyone on the motorbike with a crash helmet effectively looks the same. If you're wearing black leathers, you're not really going to get much of a description. But certainly it's been used very successfully in a number of hits that are still unsolved.
The image of respected professional hitmen as a killer elite may be past. The hitman marketplace is now full of amateurs and confusion.
I think if you're not a member of the underworld and you approach someone to carry out a hit, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get an undercover policeman, and that's happened time and time again. We've seen it throughout the courts. It just happens so much, it's almost a joke nowadays, really.
Do you want it to look like an accident or what?
That is, you know what to do. I'll leave that entirely to you.
Sentencing Rangwani, the judge said the smiling doctor had shown no remorse after agreeing to pay to have his ex-lover killed.
But I think unless you know the people who have the reputation for doing that, then you're just not going to get the real McCoy at all.
Another amateur who made the headlines recently was Barry George, the man found guilty of killing TV presenter Jill Dando.
Witnesses indicate the killer could have been waiting outside Jill Dando's house for an hour before she returned, when he shot her once at close range.
When that come up straight away, we knew they weren't a professional hit. Because, one, you wouldn't do the media, because of the outrage that it caused, so they're safe. Same as you want it a copper, you don't go and shoot policemen unless you want a lot of aggravation. You've got to be an absolute lunatic.
The police say the gun used was a 9mm semi-automatic pistol like this one.
It definitely wasn't a paid hit because no one would ever use a gun like that, particularly as it had quite specific markings on the cartridge that helped the police very quickly track down what kind of weapon it was and where the bullet had come from.
And Britain's strict gun laws are keeping many would-be hitmen at an amateur level.
In terms of gun skills, I think we're looking at a great lack of skill among the underworld at the moment. And the reason is that no one ever gets to practice. You can't possibly go out and fire a gun outside to practice, because if you do, you're going to get the police descending on you instantly. Several detectives have said to me, if people were better shots, then a lot more people would get killed than they do at the moment.
With amateurism rife in the world of the hitman, mad situations can arise, as former club bouncer Bernard O'Mahony found out.
One evening I was approached by a fella and he asked me if I could get hold of any rounds. Guns were easy to come by, but the rounds were always difficult. And I had a fella who used to make rounds up, from shells, so I said I'd get them for him, no problem. So the following week he came back when I took him in the fire exit and said, here's the rounds you wanted.
At this point, the hitman didn't know who the target was.
And away he went, and then sort of about a week later, he came back and gave me the rounds and informed me I'd bought rounds for myself. The intended victim was me. Obviously I was quite pleased. He gave me the rounds back and didn't take the man's money.
In the lethal world of the hitman, moments of black humour are rare.
If I'd have been shot and survived, I would have been completely pissed off and embarrassed that I'd have supplied the bullets that actually got me. But if he'd have been successful and I'd have died, then I don't suppose it would have made much fucking difference other than an embarrassing piece in the paper.
For the hitman, the line between professional and amateur is blurred. With the influx of drugs into major urban areas, people are getting hit for smaller and smaller payoffs.
The value of life has changed dramatically from when I was involved in crime. Now you've got lunatics on the street that do it for £5 because they want to buy a bit of skag or a bit of smack. And they think it's cool. They read the books, crime is glamorised. They all want to be the man with the gun.
We only have to go to America to look at the exact example, where some areas are completely no-go. We are going down that road. The morality's going out of society now. It's a get-rich, grab-what-you-can, throw-away society.
And the price of life has dropped over the last 10 years. I think a lot of it is down to the Yardies. When they came here, they had very few qualms about committing murder, and it just wasn't seen as a very big deal, because they were willing to use guns and they were willing to shoot people who tried to rip them off. It meant that every other gang had to start doing exactly the same thing in order to keep their place. So you suddenly had a situation, whereas in the past, if you double-cross someone, you might get a thorough beating. You were suddenly being killed for it.
With lethal violence more likely, the street dealer needed to protect himself.
And that meant that there were more guns available. It meant that guns were being used by people at lower levels in crime, like people selling cannabis on street corners. You know, they suddenly were carrying guns. And again, because they were there carrying guns, it meant that their arguments were now being resolved by shootings rather than just by arguments or so on.
It all adds up to the streets being a much more dangerous place to be.
You're looking at now, anyone can get hold of guns for cheap. You can get a replica and change the block for 18 quid. You've now got a lethal firearm.
I think the reality is that guns are far more widely available than they ever have been at any time. Despite amnesties, despite sort of various clampdowns and massive seizures, it just seems that if you're a criminal these days, there's absolutely no difficulty in getting hold of a gun whatsoever.
It takes a cool head and composure under pressure to make it to the top. Add to that a love of extreme violence and throw in a bit of bloodlust for good measure, and you might just have what it takes to be a hitman. But you'd better be prepared for the ultimate sacrifice.
We find that with the sort of organised hitman, that our cards will very often be marked. Now, albeit we can't prove it, we can wait. We've got a long time, and we make that knock on the door early in the morning, eventually.
When you go out with a gun, always must remember, people, when they come looking for you with a gun. So you now are going to die a violent death if it catches up with you, all right? Or it might come to the stage where you have to do yourself. If you get to that stage where, OK, it's time for you to go, do you want to do a life sentence and a 30-year recommendation and live in a stinking cell for the rest of your life? Or do you have a nice bottle of champagne and a bottle of brandy, have a nice meal and then put one in your mouth and pull the trigger? You can't go out killing people or shooting people or living a life of violence if you're not prepared to go the whole way for yourself.
Couple of £100, couple of grand, 100 grand, if you fancy yourself. How much is your life really worth? Sleep tight. Get down on the floor. Respect is due. Who are you gonna trust? Camera bollocks will not stop him. In the crime business, if you want to send out a message, use one of these or one of these. Thanks for doing time with the crime business.